All right, well, here we are in the video, and I got myself Binyamin. I captured a wild Binyamin, and he decided to come on and be traumatized by me. So, yeah, I know him from, I guess, how do you want to be introduced? I guess, the typology community, from your YouTube, from Hangout live stream. I don't know. I
Sure.
don't know what category it falls
I'm
into.
just a random guy on the internet that you found, and you're like, "Let's
Yeah,
have a
yeah,
conversation." There we go.
yeah. That's a good one. Yeah, and we've had some interesting conversations before, so I figured I would bring him on, and he's also done plenty of this himself, so I figured he would be a fun one to bring on. So here's Binyamin, and we're gonna talk about whatever we want to talk about. Um, and then who am I? You don't need to know that part, but yeah. So there's one thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I'm curious if you think about this at all. Um, I've been thinking about. I feel like I'm always thinking about in the background of my head. I'm thinking about like what makes a good story, and I don't know why I find that such a compelling. I feel like it's kind of an infinite like rabbit hole you can go down because there's so many different aspects to so many different stories that are good, and it's like you can't just copy and paste and say like, well, in
Yeah,
Jurassic Park the technology was so good, so you just copied good technology. Well, that doesn't work. In the Marvel movies you have really good CGI, but some of those Marvel movies are trash, so it's like there's no singular thing. It's like this, it feels like a good story is like a conglomeration of, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like it
yeah.
feels
You
like
want to try to find all the categories, the things, the notes to hit, the beats to hit.
it's something, but like I feel like
Mhm.
every time you narrow in on something, there's always like it never quite applies across the board. Like you
Yeah,
there are so many complicated variables. So I don't know. What do you see with stories, and is that something that you think about at all with your time?
in terms of like media stories, right? In terms of
Like any
something
kind
you
of story,
produce,
really. Yeah.
like a narrative that you want someone else to listen to. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, you want an overarching message to some degree. You want to be able to communicate some overarching message. Um, let's just say you have to hit like 80% of all of these points. You don't have to, every story doesn't have to hit a message, but if you can hit one, that's a good point in your favor. Um, then you want there to be some kind of struggle, some kind of challenge to overcome, some kind of character growth or development. Um, you want some kind of emotional shifting, like maybe hit some emotional beats, like melancholy is always a good one to hit. Um, and in the right order, like you don't want to just have inappropriate emotions one after the other, like jumping from like super happy to super sad or something like that.
Yeah. That brings me up to one thing that I remember when I was younger. I was kind of discovering that there were like movie critics, and some movie critics will focus more on like the emotional side of a movie, and like does it have a
Yeah.
meaning behind it? And then there are other ones that will focus on like I guess we'll just steal like typology terms, so like the ST. I feel like there are people who focus more on like the NF side of things versus like the
Yeah.
ST side, where does your world actually make sense?
Yeah.
And I
You
feel
also
like
don't wanna have too much exposition either. Like, I think you wanna have exposition through not through dialogue, but through actions and through moving the story forward. That's true too. Every scene has to contribute to the overall movie. If you have a scene that doesn't contribute or it doesn't move it forward, then you gotta cut that scene, stuff like that.
yeah, yeah. That's a good point. I I feel like I feel like that's one of my biggest problems with like modern shows. I feel like a lot of them are really long, and they have a lot of information that isn't like to keep, because shows are like you want to keep them running longer.
Right.
They'll add extra plots that don't, like plot points and like details that really don't
Yeah.
contribute or move anything forward.
But then you get the exceptions, right? Like Mad Men. Mad Men doesn't really have a plot. It does have kind of emotional beats to it. But it doesn't have like scenes don't contribute to the overall story because there is no overall story. So
Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about. Like at the beginning is whenever you like pinpoint something that's like this story did
right.
really well,
You
but it
also
doesn't.
don't want it to be too predictable.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I feel like predictability in maybe in your like, I guess in any movie we're expecting like like the hero to win most of the time. Um,
Right.
but like you don't want to know how the hero is going to win. I think
Yeah.
it's often a part of that.
Like you get something like Game of Thrones that kills off the hero at the end of the first season. Where okay, that's not predictable.
Yeah.
Yeah. You also don't you want vulnerability in the hero. You don't want the hero to just be super mad. You need some kind of kryptonite. You can't have it can't be too easy.
Yeah, that actually makes me think of the anime One Punch Man,
Right.
where the plot point. Are you familiar with that? I guess
I'm
people
assuming
know.
it's like it's in the title, One Punch Man, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the plot is essentially like he's trying to find meaning in life because it's too easy for him. Like he can't find a challenge.
Right.
So yeah,
The
it can
challenge is
be
finding a
interesting.
challenge.
Yeah, yeah, and then it
Okay.
goes on to like make connections with other people and stuff like that. But
Right. Well, that's the
so
growth thing, right? So he's learning a lesson. That's like the growth aspect of it.
mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So what are some movies that you or like stories that you look to that are really stick out in your mind that you like find yourself thinking about and grappling with? I mean, I know in your channel you talk a lot about like biblical stories and such. So,
Yeah, it's less about the story. I stories for me is just I wonder how much harm they actually do as well because life doesn't fit into a story. Events and we tend to make things into stories when they're not. And the more media we watch, the more we're interpreting the world through the lens of the story,
mm,
which yeah. There's there's one rabbi, Rabbi Nachman, who wrote a whole bunch of stories and he was talking about the power of stories. And a lot of his stories are very allegorical. They're very deep and hard to interpret. Yeah, those are interesting stories. I don't know if we can pull one up. Let's see.
and then can you share? Are you able to share things on your side?
Yeah, let me present. I'm just looking it up.
Okay.
Oh, this would be a good one. Yeah, he's a good translator. Yeah, he's got interesting stories. Let's see if I can get a summary of a story. Let's see the.
You're looking a little tired. Have you slept a lot lately?
Uh, Not so much. I've been sleeping in the sukkah downstairs.
Mm,
Um,
okay.
yeah, I don't know if it'd be good to bring these up. I can't really explain them, but they're worth looking at.
Yeah, yeah, no, you can bring them up. You can do whatever. I mean, I don't care. This
Yeah.
is free for all. Whatever you think would be best.
Trying to look of like a a list of his stories, maybe. Wiki source. Okay, here. Tale one: The Lost Princess, The Emperor and the King, The Son Who Could Not Walk, The King Who Decreed Conversion, The King's Son Who Was Made of Precious Stones, The Humble King. So I don't know which one here.
Oh,
Burger and the Pauper.
they're like parables then, more so.
I guess so. Here, once there was a burger. Berg denotes fortified city and is okay. Too much explanation here. Rabbi Nathan. Once the burger dreamed that people came to his house and were making packages and packages. He asked them, "What are you doing?" They replied, "They will carry it all away to that very same pauper, that is the pauper who lived under him as mentioned. It annoyed him very much, and he grew very angry that they wanted to carry away all his wealth to the pauper. To be wroth at them was impossible, for they were good many people. So they continued making packages and packages of all his belongings, all his wares and all his goods. They carried absolutely everything away to the aforementioned pauper, leaving him nothing in the house but the bare walls, and it upset him very, very much. Meanwhile, he woke up and saw it's a dream. And even though he saw it's only a dream, thank God, all his belongings were with him. Still, all the same, his heart pounded mightily, and the dream could not be got out of his mind, and the dream upset him severely. The pauper and his wife used to be cared for by the burgher, and he would give them often. He would give to them often. But now, after the dream, he cared for them more than before. However, whenever the poor man or his wife would come into his house, his facial expression would change, and he became frightened of them because he would recall the dream. And they, that is the pauper and his wife, would often go to his house and were often with him. One time the pauper's wife came to his house and gave her what he gave her. His expression changed and became stricken with fear. She asked him and said, "I beg pardon of your honor, tell me, why is it that whenever we come to you, your face becomes drastically changed?" He told her the whole story, that he had such a dream, and since his heart had been pounding him mightily, she replied to him, "Did the dream take place on such and such a night?" Which he said. He answered, "Yes. What about it?" She replies to them, "On that night I also dreamed that I'm a very wealthy person, and people had to come to my house and were making packages upon packages. I asked them, 'Where are you bringing this?' They replied, 'To the pauper, that is to the burgher, whom they already called a poor man now. Therefore, why do you pay attention to a dream? What for? I also had a dream. Now the burgher has become the more frightened and confused since he heard her dream as well, because it seemed that his wealth and property are to be brought to the pauper, and that the pauper's poverty are to be brought to him." Yeah, I don't know, that kind of thing. He's talking about in terms of parables.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's got a lot here.
So do you feel like that kind of a like a story, like a parable with a specific point to get out of it is something that you like value more? I've kind of got the feeling from what you mentioned before, because you're talking about how like stories can warp people in the wrong way too.
Yeah, yeah, because like it's a story. It's not trying to represent reality.
Yeah.
It's trying to represent ideas. So yeah, it's my personal preference. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm not a real story person.
Yeah, I so like do you this leads on to something else that I was curious to talk about. Do you have like a life story? Like when you think back on your life from like birth till now, is there like do you have like parts of it, or like this is who I am because these things happened, or like anything that relates, or you're just like there are events that happened?
Yeah, there's events that happen. I'm not trying to storify it. I think part of what people do when they're trying to storify things like that is like maybe they're trying to do it for themselves, but they're also trying to do it for others to be able to share it to some degree.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, that's not what I do. I don't.
Do you think you could? Like, is that something you could you like right now if I asked you like, give me your life story, and is that something you could even like pull off? You think?
I could. I mean, I'm not processed on it at all. That's not what I'm
Okay.
processing. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know, everyone's going to point at whatever part they think it is, but
Wait, what do you mean? What part? What?
like, "Oh, that's Sleep Last," or whatever. That's info
Oh,
to
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, so that's something else that I've been processing for myself lately, is that I think which you mentioned a while back, I think that processing means a whole bunch of different things to a whole bunch of different people. I'll clarify what I mean by processing. What I mean by processing is this is a reoccurring thought that pops into my head over the course of like a month repeatedly, and I think about it for 15-minute chunks at a time or whatever between the drive between
Mhm.
work. So that's what process means. I'm not processing this in the moment like some other people.
Right.
Dave.
I
Yeah.
process this a lot right now.
Right now. But I've been thinking about the fact that I don't think on the topic of typology, I don't think infodom and energy dom is a coin that can actually be pointed to. Like I don't when you really get down it to it to try to measure it, I don't think there's anything there. And I'm not saying that there isn't in info and energy dom. I'm just saying I don't think we can measure it. How do you feel about
I
that?
mean, I would agree because I don't think we can measure any coins really. Um,
Well, I feel like there are some that we have clearer thing like clearer definitions, clearer like
yeah.
examples that we can point to, like the labels with the any people. We can point to that and say like, okay, that's maybe that I don't know, maybe you found that's a bad one and it doesn't work, but with the
Um,
info and energy, I feel like there's just nothing there's like nothing to grab onto. There's nothing that we can even pretend to grab onto with that one.
I mean, I can tell we're having an info conversation now. We're not having an energy conversation at all.
I agree. But
Yeah,
then at that point, do you say, am I info dom or am I energy dom? And that's what I'm saying. Like, how do you then determine that for an entire person? And I don't think it plays out with
yeah.
a person because I
Hmm.
agree completely that we are having an info conversation right now.
And I know anytime we have a conversation with Nico, we're having an energy dom conversation, for example.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a very clear. Yeah, that's a very clear distinction. And yeah, it feels like you're trying to like kick the information out of the person. Like you can't get down to what like but as I try to describe it, I realize like what am I talking about and I can't get to anything. So like have you I guess what I'm trying to figure out like have you drilled down because you've been doing this for way longer. You've been, talking with people way longer. Is there like anything that you can say this or like these multiple variables determine what is an info or energy dom person or like
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I would say the narratives cluster around energy dom a lot more, especially personal narratives, personal life stories. It feels like
Okay.
that's what they're trying to process all day, their personal life story.
Oh, is this based off of the one video you did with like there's the circles with like
A little bit,
the
a little bit,
internal
yeah,
is it
yeah.
so you see it as a they're trying to process a personal story. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't wanna keep pointing at Nico, but he's a very energy dumb person, and he's
Yeah.
processing his own personal life story.
That's interesting. I might have to use that one and kind of test it out and see if that
Yeah.
if I get results with that.
The other thing is, energy DOMs feel like they're all just consume last. Like, you can't get information in them,
Yeah.
even if they're
Yeah.
double activated consume.
So what gives you that kind of like feeling? What examples have you seen or like what do you mean by like you can't get information to them?
They're stuck on their own information, path, it feels like you're trying to give them information, they won't take it. Um, uh, they'll interrupt you, they'll yeah. I don't know, it's just you're not having a conversation with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you get frustrated when you feel like you can't have a conversation with somebody? Like like I feel like there are times when I can sit down and like in the live stream where things are kind of getting rowdy and I feel like I can play along a little bit, but then I feel like as just stuff is going on, I'm like, okay, what are we talking about? Can we like sit down and actually discuss some information on something? I
Right.
feel that way. Do you get that kind of like feeling or
Yeah, and I guess it's expounded more if, like, the observers are swapped and they're different, if they're info or energy opposites than you, and their observers are swapped, then it's gonna be really hard to come to conclusions because 'cause you're gonna be fighting each other on what you're trying to conclude on.
hmm, yeah. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Like, NEs have a it feels like NEs are just asking more and more questions and trying to pull things apart, and anytime you're trying to get to a conclusion, they'll, like, bring up more alternatives and yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so then I'm assuming you've probably seen that, especially from the what is the name of the typing group? I'm like totally out of the loop on this information. There's a typing
CRG,
group, CRG. Okay, what does that stand for?
Cognitive Resolution Group.
Okay, and then you started that, and now you are no longer a part of it or no longer leading it. Is that correct?
I am still typing on the group, but, Annie took over the group for now, so
Okay.
or
Yeah, she mentioned
but
that to me at the end of
yeah.
last live stream. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
she's
and
doing a
then
great job, so I'm happy with that, and yeah,
yeah, she strikes me as somebody that would do good with that, but I don't know.
right.
That's just a
I don't know if
guess.
she has any plans for it, but if she has, I hope they succeed.
Yeah. Yeah. So then did you start that group?
Yeah,
Okay. And
yeah.
then what was your motivation behind that? Was it more just kind of trying to test things out and see what you could get out of typology?
No, it was people since I have a YouTube channel, I'm an expert in typology and everyone wants me to type them, and I don't wanna type people because I didn't feel like I was really good at typing people, and then there so I was doing it for free and then probably getting things wrong, so I had to figure out a way to actually give them value for, you know, me typing them.
Oh,
And
okay.
how to actually make typing work, because at the time as well, nobody was typing correctly in the community. The only good typers are Dave and Chan, which for me is like, are you the only good typers? Like, maybe, yeah. If everyone disagrees on what type this person is, so then, is that good? I don't know.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's that you can't. Oh, yeah, we've kind of discussed this at length, but yeah,
Right.
you can't. You. It's like you can't just outsource to Dave and Shannon and say that they have it right. That's lazy.
That's
Like
right.
it's lazy for the entire community. You can't just outsource to any two individuals. And it doesn't. Dave and Shan probably are some of the greatest typers out there. I'll give them that. I don't really care one way or the other. I'll just by virtue of the fact that they've typed a bunch, I'll say sure. They're I don't.
Yeah.
But regardless, it doesn't matter because you need multiple people to like.
There's no way to check. There's no way to check to
Yeah,
see if
exactly. Yeah,
typers.
you need.
And
Yeah.
the other thing is like, it's okay, some people are learning to type like them, but it doesn't mean they're typing correctly. It just
Mhm.
means, you know, their patterns are matching with their pattern or whatever.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, which I mean, I feel like I have less problem with that because in essence, me, typology is just making categories of actions. So it's like, okay, if
Right.
you're lining up with Dave and Chan's, then I guess you are typing correctly according to their definitions. So it's all a definitional game.
Yeah, but the hard part with that too is their definitions change and their categories change. Like the
Yeah.
borders of the categories, yeah, are not consistent over time.
No, 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 they're not. Which I think that's a byproduct of how they're creating the system or like discovering it, I guess. I don't know what you want to say, but it's just because they're kind of just going and as things stick out to them, they
Yeah.
change it accordingly. So yeah. Okay. Well, I've been. This is one thing that I really wanted to ask you, and I feel like I've gotten the the vibe from you, and then also like you've communicated a little bit more clearly that as we joke about in the stream, like typology is a cult, and
Right.
I feel like you seem like you're a little bit frustrated in general with typology, or is it more of like, do you feel like it's your burden to bear and people shouldn't waste their life with it, or where do you think that like frustration comes from? At least from if that's correct.
Yeah, maybe I am frustrated. I don't know. I don't It's not like an FI frustration. I think it's more like a TI frustration that it's not internally consistent. We're not agreeing on definitions. Um, yeah, there's no one to talk to. There's no conversation to be had. There's the leaders on the mountain talking down, telling everybody what is what, and we just have to believe them full throttle. Yeah. That's also kind of why I was starting the interviews that I was doing from the first place, was to check to see if they were actually typing people correctly, like they claim they were, and to
Yeah.
check to see if how it actually plays out and not how they're projecting on other people. Like it's easy to stand there and say, "Oh, NI does this and does this and does this," but do they know? Not really. Um, they know how they work and assuming they have an, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, there was a big lack of getting data from reality. Um, and then again, like you can't really trust people's subjective narrative of themselves when you're talking to them. So you have to be skeptical as well.
Yeah, that's one big part for me. It was something I was looking into because David Shan specifically, I'm assuming that's kind of who you're talking about here with the on top of the
Right.
mountain, but um, I think all
Well,
typology
everyone in typology
systems.
was like that too, not them
Yeah,
specifically. Yeah.
yeah. Um, but I one of the things you really have to question, which is just another layer of doubt you can throw on everything, is are you getting accurate information from the person about their life and about how they actually feel?
Mhm.
Because and they have their certain methods where they'll talk about Dave will often say like skip to the 45-minute mark and then they'll be having a real conversation at that point because you can only like like hold in liar words, and I'm like, is that even true? Like that's an entire thing in and of itself that you have to look into of like how do you determine when somebody's lying or not, and there are no
Yeah.
definitive ways
It's the same
either
thing with
way as
trying
far
to
as I can tell.
talk about, like, what makes a good story. Sure, let's give all these criterias, but at the end of the day, you'll have a great story that doesn't have any of these criterias. So,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah, it are these anecdotes able to categorize type properly? But then you'll get someone who's doesn't fit that. Like, at the 45-minute mark, they'll be lying and they'll be telling the truth at the 10-minute mark.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's hard. So like what have you figured out from all of like where are you at with all this typology stuff? Because you've been in the weeds, and I don't say this
Yeah.
to like prop you up as you're the perfect, because I don't think that either. I don't think anybody has a clue what they're doing as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. Yeah,
I've
no one has a clue what they're doing.
that's
Um,
what real quick. I just need to you can I guess kind of think about that. But I'll rant. I found OPS because I was looking at MBTI, and I around that time I was really discovering the how like I don't even like using the word this like the word scientific method or words because that I feel like that's hijacked into something weird in of itself. But I was just figuring out like how do you actually start measuring things? How do you determine whether something's true or not? And I was kind of falling down that rabbit hole. And at the time I was preferably interested in MBTI, and I was looking around for, and I was like, okay, all these systems, what is the what that they are talking about? And there is no what behind the what, like the actual cognition that doesn't exist.
mm,
We don't know what that is. We assume we do. So that's how I fell into the OPS rabbit hole was, and I'm now finally I feel like emerging from the other end, and I'm like I'm in the exact same place. There is no what
yeah.
of the what here. Yeah. So
I
anyway,
mean,
back
for
to
me,
your
cognition
yeah
is the one thing we can actually objectively track to some degree. Like, that's we have to get down to cognition. We can't just talk about anecdotes and surface level stuff. Um, and so
you-
if you categorize someone based on how they come off, like even the word personality is a misnomer because we're not really talking about personality. We're talking about cognition. And yeah,
yeah
sure, it represents itself in personality, but like we all have many personalities. We use them differently at all different times, right? It's not yeah. Like one of the things is we want to have a consistent personality in order to not make people afraid and show them that we're unstable, right? Like only the most crazy people have completely different personalities. So we want to try to stay as stable as possible, but that in and of itself can like be suppressing cognition. So so yeah, it has to get down to cognition. And then so like if you're typing someone and you say, "Oh, this is you and this is why you do this and this is why you do this." So all that is projecting. All that is saying, "I know you better than you know you. And if you disagree with me, you're wrong." Right?
yeah
So yeah, there has to be some kind of feedback loop. There has to be some kind of communication when you're typing people. Um,
Yeah, I'm it feels a little bit like we're in the boat of, and you can correct me if you know anything more about this field, but from what I've looked into with IQ is something that's like it's measuring something, but we don't really know what it's measuring. It's like tests to determine a number, but then we're like, okay, what does that
yeah,
number actually
it
correlate
measures
to?
how well
What
you
are
do on
the
the IQ test.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's like
Yeah,
it feels very similar to me.
sure. Yeah, only IQ is you're defining it based on the spectrum. OP is not really. There's not really a test that you can objectively score points on.
Yeah, yeah,
Not like a right answer. Um, it depends where they catch you, how you're feeling that day, where what your energy state is at when you're doing the video. Is it the morning? Is it the night? Um, yeah, so many variables and factors. Where I was at it at from the very beginning is pretty much where I'm at now, where it's just yeah. It's not real. It's just a way to put people in boxes, and based on, yeah, every different typology system has a different way to cut the cake.
Yep.
And
So do you think there is do you think there's more negative or positive value being generated from being in the community, dealing with typology?
I mean, there's both, it's mixed. Um, Being in a community in and of itself as mixed things, like it's one of the things we're missing these days is more community oriented stuff. So it's good
Yeah.
to have communities, and typology is less toxic overall because people are kind of interested in growth. But then at the same time, you have the people that are just um, holding people back as well. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Choose your friends wisely.
Yeah. That's been one thing watching you that's like fascinated me because I I don't remember when I found your channel. I found it years ago when you're just putting out your weird typology video stuff and going over the details um and I was looking at it and I was fascinated, and you struck me as somebody who was like working on a project, and then I'm come to find out like as the Thursday streams come around, I'm like, oh, this is a guy who's oriented in community, and like that really blindsided me because I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me like you're here to connect with people and to connect with people to further the information and kind of have like a double feedback loop that way. I don't know. How do you see that? Do you
Yeah,
feel
I
like
guess
you're that
so.
person?
I mean, my YouTube channel started not for typology purposes. It started more because I had these ideas and nobody gave a shit and no one wanted to hear them. So I just wanted to like say them to the internet. And if anyone ever wanted to hear them one day, then there they are.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And so that's kind of what it was, just for me to do that. Less to build a community because I didn't see how a YouTube channel would be a community building thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Well, yeah,
But
your
with
first video, at least that you have on right now, I think is from like 15 years ago or something. So you
maybe.
probably didn't even work the same way.
Right. Yeah. That's right. But yeah, over time became integrated, I guess, with the community. It's weird for me. I don't know how extroverted community stuff works really, but I guess
Yeah.
I became integrated with it to some degree. Um, yeah, and I saw that like, yeah, it's a community without really a shepherd, or you know what I mean. There's no one really guiding it. It's just there, and deal with being there. You don't have a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is weird. I feel like I have a lot of processing to do on the community with the community, and that's partially why I'm here is because I was sitting by in the sidelines for so long, and then
right.
I was observing it, and I feel like right now it feels more stagnant to me. Maybe that's wrong, and that's just my
Yeah.
perspective.
Typology in general is really stagnant. I think you'll see that the subscription numbers are dropping on all the typology stuff. Um, Dave and Chen are begging for clients more, probably because they don't have enough work to do right now.
Yeah.
Um, Also, like, how many times can you make the same video? Like, how many times?
No, no, you're not allowed to say that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like one of the things and ultimately I'm sitting right here with you, and I'm partially processing what I'm doing as I'm here doing it with you. Like I don't really know what this whole recording the conversation with people is about, but I feel like partially like one of the motivations that's in there is I just want to have a conversation with people in the typology community without trying to put the typology on the front. Like let's filter it through typology. That's often how all of these conversations are happening. Like right now, you haven't heard me talking about any of my functions. I'm not trying to like, and I'm not
yeah,
saying that that's not useful, but I want to have like a real conversation, and I want to see what arises out of that.
right.
I
Yeah, can
guess.
we even talk normal? Can we,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
avoid typology when we're
yeah.
talking? Yeah,
Like we've talked about it now, and that's fine. That's part of it, but
right.
it's not my goal. It's just I know we're
Sure.
both interested in it, so yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I mean, I'm also for, like, the Thursday community stuff, it's like, a community to start from. Like, there are people that are interested in this stuff, and we can start there as, like, a ground base, but then move to getting to know each other for real, and I don't know, just having that sharing about each other's lives sort of thing, just chilling. Yeah. It doesn't have to have a purpose other than community. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm sitting here and I'm like, how did you figure that out? Like figure out to make just community. I'm like, how did you had to have like figured that out, right? You had to sit there and think about it, but you probably just did it and it happened, I would assume.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even know it was going to work. I saw it as a void. That's really what I was looking for was voids and to fill voids.
Mm,
Yeah. Like
that's
voids
smart.
slap you in the face, just like, "Oh, there's something missing here," and
Yep.
you can't convince anyone to fill that void. You have to fill it yourself. And then once you
Yeah.
do that, then people will make their own ways to fill the voids.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Cause yeah, I see I see yeah, I guess I'm doing the same thing in my own life and different in my own
Right.
ways. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, a random thought that was just bothering me a minute ago. So I before this interview, I don't know why it sounds weird and stalkerish, and I hope it doesn't come off that way. But I went through like all of your videos.
Oh my god. You stalker.
But I went
I
through all
don't
your
feel
videos because
comfortable
I'm
talking
like,
to you anymore.
what's up? Oh
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
feel comfortable
You gotta
talking to you
jump.
anymore.
You gotta
Yeah.
jump out of here. You know, I'm
Feels all
I'm
creepy.
halfway
My
around the
skin is my
world.
skin is, like, leaving my body. Yeah.
So, but I was doing it because I'm like, I knew I wanted to bring you on. I knew I wanted to have a conversation. I wanted to like conglomerate you. I want to just take all of what you've output and just be like, okay, what is this guy doing? And I look at it
What
and
is
I'm
this
like,
weirdo doing?
this guy doesn't even know what he's doing. Like I see it, and I'm just like, you're just putting out stuff you're interested in, and that's it. Like that's all you're doing, as far as I
That's
can
all
tell.
I'm
You're just like,
doing.
I'm interested, and I don't know, do
Uh-huh.
it.
There's no grand plan. That's good. My
Yeah.
plan has worked.
So you have a secret plan to brainwash us all now.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
The ones that stalk
But
me.
yeah. Um, I was gonna go on. Oh, so the reason why I even brought that up though is because I read so many comments that like how does this make you feel when you read people in the comments and they're like, "Oh my god, Benjamin, your TI, it's so genius, the things that you've been thinking of." Like I saw so many of those comments that were like, "Your TI is amazing." And I'm like, "Do you feel a way about that, or is that weird to you? Because it feels weird to me."
I don't remember those comments. You should point them to me. I might need a pick me up someday.
I'll have to go through. It's probably
Yeah,
less than I feel like it is, but I feel like I just saw
probably.
2 and it was
Yeah,
just so gross, and I'm like, "Who says that?" I don't know, it's
right.
weird. Um,
I don't yeah, I don't remember that, but sure.
that's good, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so on another note, I was listening to, and this was something completely removed and different because I was, stalking Reggie's channel, and I found an old interview he did with you, like, 3 years ago. There was there's a couple of interesting things that stuck out to me. Number 1, firstly, Reggie is a lot different than he was, like I feel like he's a lot different now than he was, like, a couple years back. He felt like he was, like, way more, like, I guess crazy? I don't really know a better, like, catch-all term for that, but he felt like he was a little more crazy, and now he's, like, really, really mellow.
Yeah,
Do you
he
see
had a
that
couple
difference?
crashes. Yeah, he's had a few crashes.
Okay,
I've seen the difference,
okay,
yeah.
yeah. That was
Yeah,
interesting. So, like,
he used to have very sharp edges.
yeah, yeah, that's probably, yeah, a good way to put it. Which is cool to see. I mean, it's cool to see somebody change. So
Yeah.
I would say it seems positively, but I don't want to project
And I
onto
think to
him.
some degree he was planning that too. He was planning to have a story arc,
Mm,
like a growth story arc publicly. So he's planning
interesting.
to fight with people and then make peace with them and be for their friends or something like that.
That's a little strange, but do
Yeah.
you, man? So that was the one thing I was thinking about. And Reggie, if you see this, I'm not stalking your channel either. I was just something I stumbled upon, and yeah. But the other thing is when he was interviewing
He's a stalker,
you,
Reggie. Run away.
yeah, run, run away from me. Um, you had mentioned that you had alexithymia. Is that
Yeah.
correct? That's still
Yeah.
okay. So, like, you literally don't know when you're feeling different emotions? Is that how that works? Like, you're just completely unaware?
Unaware. Yep.
So it's not until is it like, when does it hit you? When do you know that you're in an emotional state?
I usually don't. Yeah. I usually don't.
Okay. That's that's so bizarre to me. Like, I'm always like, I'm sitting here and I'm like, when I showed you that Shrek video, I'm like, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, what how is this making him feel? And I'm thinking like I'm feeling slightly embarrassed for showing him, but I was so curious about what was gonna happen when I showed you that video. So like there's just nothing there when you're experiencing the video.
No, there is something there. I do have a feeling, and I just don't feel the feeling,
Okay.
if that makes sense. Like, I don't feel the feeling, but the feeling is there. Like, if I look in the mirror, I can see the reaction on my face, and I can read it, like, with my
Yeah.
FE powers. Be like, "Oh, you're feeling uncomfortable."
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
In the moment, I'm not aware that I'm feeling uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and it'll still modify my behavior. It'll still alter the way I behave and interact and react, but I just won't
But you
know.
okay.
I
So it
won't
is
come.
really like a true like young uh the like what is it? The the shadow that controls you kind of a thing. It's like, is that a good category for it?
Maybe. Yeah, if you had to force it into a category. Yeah, like, I would be definitely suppressing it. Yeah.
Like what do you mean like if you felt it you'd be suppressing it or
No, like, that's the idea of the shadow is anything you're suppressing, it has to come out somewhere
oh,
else.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you feel like do you have emotional blowups when you're like do you get like really angry like
That
when something
energy thing?
on
Yeah,
something?
yeah. Yeah, and people think it comes out of nowhere. Yeah, I get
I
those.
mean,
Do you get
yeah,
those?
um yeah, yeah, I'd say overall. Yeah, it's probably
No.
not. I don't feel like it's super explosive, but yeah, I do.
Mine can be explosive. It's rare that it happens. I have to be pushed a very far away, but then it just seems like, it comes out of nowhere for some reason. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm. Okay, so I feel like this is a really weird question to ask, but I guess if you don't have feelings, you'll be okay with it.
I do have feelings.
I know. I'm just messing with you.
Uh,
Um, but if you don't want to talk about this, you don't have to. I'm genuinely just curious about like if there is a story behind that. So as far as I understand, you have a couple of kids and you've been divorced. Is that accurate? And you don't have to say if you don't want to.
yeah, that's
Okay.
accurate. Yeah.
Okay. So is there like a story behind that, or like what did you go through with the divorce, and what's been kind
Probably,
of
yeah.
like
There's probably a story there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so like would you mind sharing that, or is that do you feel like that's off limits?
Again, like, if I had to turn it into a story, I wouldn't know how to do it. So, but I could share. I just
Okay.
don't know.
Yeah, what are the events? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I don't know what to share.
Okay, I'll help you along. What how did you meet and connect with your wife?
So I was looking to get married, and I was going out on dates. I was working on like a screenplay for somebody at some time. And he says, "Oh, I know somebody, but um, you'd have to meet her parents first." And like that's not her, but like that's what his story was. I don't know what that was. So I was invited to her parents' house for like a meal or whatever, and we had a conversation. And then like I'm like, how does this work? So like, am I? Are we? Like I went back to my friend. I was like, how does this work? Like, are we supposed to go out now or whatever? He's like, oh, I'll look into it for you or whatever. So, anyways, we set up the date and worked on a date, and and like she was trying to get rid of me. Like she was old, quote unquote, for marriage. Like people usually get married younger in this culture. Um,
Do you mind sharing what this culture means?
like in the yeah religious Jewish community culture.
Okay, okay.
So yeah, she was approaching 30, and that's old for getting married,
Hmm.
which sounds weird today. That's changed really fast, right?
Yeah.
30s,
That's normal
thirty
from like
five
my
is usual.
Yeah,
Yeah.
from the Protestant Christian community, it's the same thing. Yeah. So
Right. But yeah, back in my day when that was happening, most people were married by like 22, 24. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So um, then I'm curious. A totally like different question. When did you move to Israel, and did you move to Israel after you were married or before? Or how'd that
I
happen?
came here on an internship. I was going to university in Canada. Um, and I wanted to get some experience before I graduated. And I figured, why not a different country? And so I came here and I did a couple of internships here, and then I immigrated. Yeah,
Okay.
that's sort of thing. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. And then you were married after you immigrated.
married after I did the army. Then I got married after the army, and some more. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
acclimatization here. You have to learn a new language, all that stuff.
Yeah. And then you learned that language from scratch.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah,
Nice.
pretty much
Nice.
from scratch.
Cool. All right. So then so presumably you eventually married this woman. So then like what do you think
Woman.
went wrong with the marriage?
It's just
Well, let me clarify. Like I understand it's probably like a thousand different complicated things, but it's like what at the end
yeah.
of the day, I feel like people can there's like the choice where you can still come together and you can fix the 1,000 problems or you cannot. So it's like what's the tipping point and what kind of brought you to the edge?
That was it. Just you can't fix the problems. There's no one to work
Okay.
with. There's no direction. There's no reinforcing good behavior, and um yeah. It's always it's a I was always the rock keeping things together. I was always making sure like putting in a lot of energy and effort, making sure things were good at the end of the day. Um and I don't know, I got a bunch of stories, but I don't it's might not even be appropriate to talk about them.
Okay, yeah, that's fine if you don't feel like it
But
might be.
yeah, just it's hard fighting to keep things together when the other side is trying to tear them apart.
And that's how you
So
felt it was. We
that's how I
like I
felt
was
over and like
yeah,
all the time. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. And then do you think I'm not trying to like claim that it's your fault or anything, but like do you think you had fault to plan in the whole thing, and where do you think that lied out? Was it like the initial choice of like who you chose to marry, or were there other factors?
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely part of it. Um, Initial choice of who I chose to marry. I was sort of so there was a moment where I didn't actually propose to get married, but she told her family that we were engaged, and here I am alone in this country, and she has a huge family that all came to celebrate us getting engaged out of the blue. And then like here I am being like, we didn't actually get engaged. Like, no, I can't say that. I'm scared of the tribe. So I just sort of was like, I guess I'm getting married then.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah,
That's scary. That's scary as
right.
crap.
So I mean, I learned not to let that
Ooh.
happen again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, I feel like that's kinda what I was, like, looking for, honestly,
right.
in that story is, like,
Okay.
what you just said right there. It's like, what was the I guess what was the lesson you learned from it? If we turned it into a parable, if we cut all the parts off, all the
Right.
technicalities, it's like, what was the parable for you? Yeah.
That yeah, if you don't stand up to the tribe, you might end up in a marriage that you don't like for 10 years, so
Yeah.
right.
Wow. Alright, well, thanks for sharing about that, I appreciate it. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine it's easy to think back on and but maybe you've already done all your processing on it and you feel like you're through it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't processed it into a story, like, I don't do
No,
that.
no, yeah. No,
Yeah.
no, not that's not that I'm just saying, like, have you
Yeah.
I feel like part of processing another, like, word we could use for it is you go back and you, like, you go through the painful moments and get the shock through your body or, like, whatever emotion comes, and you go through that again and again and again, and then eventually they're like, there's no more shock there. It's like I'm done with
Yeah.
the pain of it. Yeah.
That sounds like not my functions, but yes, I get your feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how you would do that yourself, but I'm just saying
Right.
like that's yeah. There's some it seems like there's some version of that that you presumably everybody has to do. I don't know how that comes
Mhm.
out though.
Yeah. What principles can I pull out of it? What can I build out of this? Yeah.
Um, so, um, and then so as far as I understand, you have your kids with you. So is like that a was that a battle too? Getting your
Oh,
because I feel
yeah.
like women always get the custody. So like that sounds like hell on earth that you had to fight through, probably.
Yeah. I just talked to a friend today who's gonna go through something similar,
Oh,
sounds like. Yeah.
that's not good.
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, I was seeing my kids every day, putting them to bed, giving them a shower when I got home. Like, I get home, kids are with you, like, "I had them all day, your turn."
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, I was my son was like whenever I was there, he was always beside me. He was always following me around like a little duck, like, just very connected to them. And then
Mhm.
when we split, I was still coming by the house every day, giving them the bath, like, trying to make sure that nothing changed, but then all of a sudden it changed. Um, so yeah, for 2 weeks, I wasn't allowed to even talk to them on the phone or
Oh,
see them. Yeah, and then it was, like, 2 months before I was able to finally see them in, under supervised visits, and it was, like, yeah, 4 years until I finally got custody.
wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
that sounds hard.
yeah.
Okay. So on a I mean, unless you have anything to finish up with on that. Um,
No,
on
yeah,
another
life
note,
was hard. That's
I
a good conclusion.
yeah,
Yeah.
I again, I appreciate you sharing that. I always find it. I don't know. I feel like talking about hard things is like there's something very. I feel like people often can avoid those things, and it's like I feel like there's a lot of like real conversation to be had there. But I don't.
Yeah, there might be.
How do you feel that? Like,
There might be real conversation to have there. It's hard because it's a decider issue too, and I don't know wanna be like, "Oh, it's all her." It's you know what I mean?
yeah,
It's,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, but, I mean, generally, for anyone out there, think of the kids. The kids need a mother and a father, and don't use them as a weapon, and
yeah, yeah,
don't like, before I got divorced, she took the kids from me twice. And the police completely support that. They're like, if you want to see the kids, you have to go through the courts and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
So I was sort of forced to resolve things with her so that I could get to see the kids. Like, she was using them as a weapon twice already. So the third time she did it, I was like, that's enough, no more. And
yeah,
yeah, she's like,
yeah,
oh, if you want to be back with me, you're gonna have to this and this. I'm like, no, no, it's over. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. That's rough. That's the worst part of divorce, as far as I can tell, is how it impacts kids, assuming you have them. But yeah,
right. Yeah, yeah. Everything was like a power struggle, and using the kids as leverage is, I guess, her power in this day and age.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah. I feel like I've heard some conversations about people trying to kind of overturn, at least in America. I can't remember actually what I'm thinking of, but I know that I've heard some stuff on it. So who knows? Maybe in 50 years, dads will be
Right.
able to not get screwed over. But
Yeah.
so on, moving on to a different topic. I stalked you so hard, I went and listened to your album.
Oh, wow. Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, yeah. No, that was actually really good. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Um,
Oh, that's the first person that liked my album. Good for you.
really?
I don't know. I have no idea. No, there's a couple that said they liked it, but
Yeah,
few and far
so
between.
for me, I appreciate music that I feel does something different. Um, and even like I feel like I probably wouldn't go back and like listen to it on repeat like 100 times like some other stuff, but I highly appreciated what it was and I would probably go back to it a couple more times, yeah.
Oh,
So like that
thank you.
to me that is above and beyond a lot of albums I've listened to in my life. Like, I would
Yeah.
not go back and listen to a lot. So,
I mean,
um,
it didn't turn out as I wanted it to, but, we did our best.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, how long did that take to make?
3 years?
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it like a chip away process,
Chip away
like,
project, yeah,
doing
yeah, yeah. I had the
little
divorce,
work here and there?
through while I was doing it too, and
Okay.
chip away. It took me less than a year to write all the songs, but then, you know, the production took 3 years after that.
Yeah. So what would you have, liked to see different about it? Because you said it didn't come out like you wanted it to.
Yeah. I don't know, there was things that I was hearing that I wanted to change, and it was hard to communicate that, with the producer I was working with, and,
Mm.
um, yeah, I don't know. I want like, the whole time I wanted there to be more room, more breathing room, more space, and I was trying to get that space, but it just feels all jumbled together. So, figuring out a way to create more breathing space in the music, more yeah,
So, like, less
longer
space
transitions between
filled
them maybe, and
and, like, what would that also fall into, like, less instrumentation at different points and things like that? Like, less
maybe,
space sound
yeah,
space being taken up? Or
maybe as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, I thought it was really good. Like, it was creative. It was something that I could appreciate as a creative
Did you
endeavor, and
did
it
you hear it on, like, YouTube? Or where did
yeah,
you hear it?
yeah.
Like, the with the video?
Yeah, the full thing. Yep. The full
Right,
42
okay,
or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Um
if, like, you hear it on Spotify, they change all the songs orders, and then you don't get the transitions right.
Oh, that's gross. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think probably part of why I would say that I enjoyed it quite a bit also is because I appreciate an album experience. I don't like individual songs. I like putting on an album and it pulling me through an entire like the ups and downs and everything like that.
yeah,
So that's probably
that's
part
what
of
I
the
tried.
reason why I enjoyed it too.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, um
You do music?
no, no,
No.
I'm musically at 0.
Okay.
Yeah. I've
One day
definitely
maybe.
thought about yeah, yeah, no, I actually right after I listened to it, I was like, I've wanted to for quite some time just dabble around with some interesting, like just instrumental software or whatever. Um,
Hmm.
so maybe I'll mess around with that someday. But
Sweet.
well, technically that's not quite right. So there is weird kind of thing, but there is a video game back when I was young, when I was like 14, called Little Big Planet 2, and the whole point of the game is to like generate your own content from the game. Like there's game to play through, but then it gives you everything, all the tools from the game to create your own levels and things like that. And in the game, they had a like instrumentation kind of like a music editor kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So I did technically create some weird stuff with that, but it was
Oh,
hot garbage. So,
yeah, they had another one, like a Mario one on Nintendo at some point that I was
yeah,
playing.
Super Mario Level Maker, Super Mario Maker. I think that's the name. Yeah,
I
if
don't
that's what
remember.
you're thinking of.
Mario Music Maker? Yeah.
Oh, it's just for music. Okay. I-
Mario Paint. That's what it was called.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
Interesting. I
like
didn't know about that one.
so we're these are all just sequencers, right? So, but yeah. Yeah, it was, one of those sequencers that they gave to people.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so me and my wife actually, when we were done with church today, we were talking a little bit about circumcision on our way on our drive home from church.
Mhm.
So we came to the conclusion we did not circumcise our son because we went. There's no purpose in doing this. We're not Jewish, and there we have like we're not we have no obligation towards this. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't really feel any need to strap my son down and cut off
Mhm.
the foreskin.
Okay.
Um, what how do you view like I'm just curious, how do you view circumcision? Do you think like have you read anything that it's beneficial? I feel like I've heard a lot of things about like it's beneficial for this and it's not for this. It seems like an overall net neutral point where there's like maybe some slight benefits here and there. I was just curious if you had any information on it and any
Yeah, I
opinions.
guess there are some benefits. It's widespread. It's not just a Jewish thing. There's also African tribes and things like that do it.
Mhm.
Um, the one thing I can say is the one of the major sources of problems in human society and civilization is that organ, and the
Yeah.
rectification of that organ is imperative for us to advance in society, um, and using that organ responsibly. So there's definitely a like some work to be done there. Um, but biblically in the narrative, it's a covenant. It's part of a
Yeah.
covenant, the circumcision. Um,
So when you say that it has, like, are you referring to, like, STDs when you say that that's a
the organ as being a problem, the fact
yeah,
that
what
rape and um, who's
oh,
that
okay.
guy P Diddy and all that stuff, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
there's a
okay.
serious problem with that organ in our civilization.
Okay, that's what
Yeah,
you're talking about, okay.
yeah, and so using it correctly is a struggle.
Okay, so then how do you tie that in with circumcision? Or what are you yeah, where are you tying that together?
Yeah, that there is a rectification to be done there. Like there is something that, yeah. Another thing, like there's just so many purposes to it. So like there's an in-group thing. So if you have like a spy or someone among you and you just check them, you're like, okay, you didn't cut that off. Like,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of benefits to it. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
in the text itself of the Bible, there was Dinah was kidnapped. So Jacob had 12 sons and one daughter. And so she was kidnapped and raped and stolen. And so the brothers said, well, you can't be with our sister unless you circumcise yourself. Like this is, if you want to be with our women, you also have to circumcise. So he said, okay, so everybody circumcise themselves in your village, and then we can intermingle. And so after they circumcised on the third day when it hurt the most, they went in and they just murdered everybody in the village. Um, yeah, so there, it's also, I don't know where I was going with that, but it's also a yeah. But you see the rectification needed to be made. Like the guy had an urge, and he went and he did that, and
Yeah.
there's probably something that need to, yeah.
So, like, I guess are you approaching this because I feel like it sounds like you have somewhat incomplete thoughts, but are you approaching this from, like, a literal and symbolic kind of perspective of, like, cutting off the foreskin? Or, like, is there information I'm missing here where the foreskin, like, cutting that off has direct
On the ST,
implications?
like the
Yeah,
actual
yeah, yeah.
ST of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, I didn't. It's hard to compare, right? You have to kind of have a life with and a life without, and then go back to
That's
with,
true.
and then go back to without to sort of compare it.
That's true.
So I don't have a personal ST on it.
Yeah, same. I have no
Right,
reversal either.
right. But
Although
it's
I
there. You
actually have
can look it up.
heard
You can research it. Yeah.
well, yeah, I have looked into it and I haven't found anything that necessarily stuck out to me as particular on it. But I was just saying if you had anything interesting to say about it.
Yeah.
So I don't
I
want to be
mean,
too
apparently, like the self pleasure is harder to do when you're circumcised. For example, I don't know.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nah, I've heard some weird things like that. I don't really know quite where they quite where they land. But anyway, how are you feeling with the conversation? Do you got energy left? Are you ready to keep
Yeah.
going,
Let's
or
keep
are you?
going. Yeah. Let's go a bit. Well, if you have more questions, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, yeah, I have plenty more I can ask you.
All right.
So
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like you always have something interesting to give me, and I feel like that's partially why I have you on here too, is because you always have something weird to spit out that always takes me off guard, and I enjoy that. So, um,
Okay. Well, I'll try not to disappoint. So far, it feels like I kinda
no,
have, but
no, I'm
yeah.
really enjoying this.
Okay,
I hope
great.
you are too, but I'm really enjoying this. Yeah, physics. So as far as I understand, you went to school for physics, is that correct? And you've done some work with it. So is that
Right.
something that you're like continuously interested in, or is it something that you've just kind of done in school and have
Yeah,
a general
so
base knowledge of?
I remember first falling in love in math. Like, I was always good at math, and it was always easy, but I think in grade 2, I fell in love with math, and then, like, grade 11, I was introduced to physics, and I was like, "Oh, wow, this is truth." Yeah.
That- That's a
I
pretty good
mean,
yeah,
yeah.
analysis.
There's always that moment when anyone does this. I'm sure everyone has this memory when they have, um, the way to solve for a projectile, on the side of energy, and then the way to solve for the projectile on the side of motion, and you get the same answer if you work with energy as you do when you work with motion, and it's just like, wow, how do these 2 worldviews match up? Like, how is this true and that's true? And they seem to have nothing to do with each other, but they come to the same answer.
Yeah,
So for me, that was just like, okay, there's something here. Yeah. There is order, there is structure to the world and to the universe. It's not just chaotic and random.
yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's what I've that's kind of how I've been. I feel like I've been leaning more towards like it'll probably finally get me there in like 2 years where I'll probably jump into physics and start learning about it more for just fun.
Yeah.
But I feel myself leaning in that direction because I see the same thing you do where it's like there's yeah something real here, which
Right.
doesn't feel like we actually have that very much in reality. Interestingly enough.
Yeah. And then like when you look at it in terms of history, we get to a point where we feel like we understand all of physics, all of reality, nothing left to understand, and then a new discovery is made, and all of the previously unanswered questions now have an answer, and you have more questions.
Hmm.
Um, and it feels like we're at a very stagnative point right now where there's something we're missing because things aren't lining up between different domains of physics.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have some of those fleshed out. Just yeah, the physical world is very closed. Like you need a PhD, you need to prove yourself, and before you can actually have these theoretical conversations.
Oh
Um,
yeah, the
yeah,
like the scientific cult, so to speak.
right, yeah. And so the bar to entry and the yeah, kind of have to be a pleb for a certain number of years, and I just wasn't. I was just like, yeah,
Well, yeah, I mean, what is it? I think it was Moby Dick. I heard. Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure Moby Dick that nobody knew about the book for like it wasn't popular until quite a while after he
really.
died, like 40, 50 years. So
Yeah, there's I don't know if about Moby Dick, but there's a bunch of things like that, like the starving
yeah.
artist sort of idea. Yeah,
Yeah. So like, hey, if you I always figure that way for myself. It's like if I have a bunch of stupid thoughts, like write them down, just put them down. Maybe it'll have use for somebody someday and I'll never know about it. And if I didn't write it
yeah,
down, who knows what would have happened. So it's like I feel more and more where I'm at in life. I'm like seeing like the really serious value of like get a piece of paper, get a Word document, get a Google Doc, write
that's why
things
I got a
down.
YouTube. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I can share my
Exactly.
thoughts because no one else was listening. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. It's super valuable to not leave things at like imagine, imagine Carl Jung, imagine Nietzsche, or I probably pronounced that incorrectly, but imagine if they never wrote anything down, if they just sat there with their thoughts and they thought they were super cool and nobody listened and they just sat
Yeah.
around with them. Like
And how much
those are
better have they made the world really? Like,
well,
just say, well, we at least we have things to talk about.
yeah, yeah, I was gonna say I'm just those are people that stick in my mind, but yeah.
Right. I agree. I like, yeah, but yeah,
Yeah, I don't know how much better they made the world, but I guess if they didn't do it, somebody else probably would.
exactly.
Um,
That's the thing, right? Yeah.
um, so speaking of writing things down, so I've been thinking lately about a couple of different typology aspects. And I've been thinking, if I can't prove that there's such a thing as in like an energy or an infodom, then for me, I was thinking about that for myself, and I'm like, would I be an energy or infodom? Like, am I correctly typed? And I was just thinking about it, and it's like it's been a while since I revisited that thought process of like questioning my type and
Mhm.
seeing where I lay, and I realized like there is no
Yeah.
variable that I can point to that can absolutely prove like what my last animal would be or what I'm double activated in, or for myself personally, I
Yeah.
don't
I
see
mean,
anything there.
what I'm questioning, what I've always questioned more is not if I'm typed correctly or what is my real type, is this system even right to type people? Like, is
Yeah.
this are these the boxes we really want to place on people? Like, oh, there's an order that goes 1, 2, 3 of animals? Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah. Are we really that predictable, or is it more of a, yeah, I don't know.
It feels like a complicated ecosystem. Like, it feels like if you and I don't know what I mean by that. Like, I it just feels to me like there's a complicated ecosystem going on with the, like, the cognition aspects that outputs something that we can then project on, like, the OPS terms onto.
Well,
It's
that's it, yeah,
we can
you're
always
projecting a worldview. You're putting on glasses and you're seeing the world through these glasses,
yeah.
and things have to fall into these sides and boxes, and that's okay. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with that. That's just not reality.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
exactly.
what we're
Yeah.
forcing reality to be into for us to represent it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I lost my train of thought there. But, so how do you, because you talked about this a little bit also on one of the live streams where you were talking about how social types, the social type 4 was something that you felt like that was like sort of your goal, or you know, I probably have your words completely wrong, but you're saying like you feel like you're defined by the number 4, like you're trying to connect with people, which that could be, you know, like FE last or whatever. But do you have, firstly, am I getting your words right? And then like, do you have any elaboration on that, or
Yeah, I mean, it's just a general, and I think the community picked up on it too. It's like it's your motivation, it's the longer term um ambition and goal, whereas like shorter term cognition is that balance.
yeah.
Um it's more of like an all defining thing. But I mean, again, if like these are categories and boxes that we're sticking people in that aren't necessarily does not necessarily reflect reality completely. It's just
Yeah.
one way to slice the cake and look at people, and yeah. And then you can define the social types however you want, and based on those definitions, people will fall in where they fall. So yeah, I did a video on the social types where I sort of separated it out. I said, okay, there's high ambition and low ambition people, and then there's different hierarchies that people see themselves on. And
Mhm.
so, do you see yourself as an ambitious person that wants to be at the top of a hierarchy? And that's one side of it. And then which hierarchy? Like, are you going for a power hierarchy? Are you going for a social hierarchy? Are you going for a specialist hierarchy, being the best at something? Are you going for financial hierarchy to have wealth? And I feel like that has more nuance and description of what the social types are trying to map. But then if
Yeah.
you lump them all together, all the high ambition people, doesn't matter which hierarchy they're on, they're all ones. You could do that. That's a way you can categorize and split the cake.
Mhm.
And then all of the very low ambitious people, doesn't matter which hierarchy they're looking at, they're all fours. Um, okay. Yeah.
Well, isn't embedded in that the assumption that we can like tell exactly who's ambitious? I mean, I don't know, maybe it makes itself obvious to us as people, but I feel like it's not actually that obvious sometimes. Like, it's not easy to pick up on who is the ambitious people, because you could have somebody like a pro football player who seems like they're really ambitious, but they just really like playing the game and they like hanging out with their buddies on the team. It's like,
Yeah.
how
I
do you
think it's
determine
a
it?
lot easier to
So
tell on the social types than it is for cognitive types.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of the rest of the coins. Social types is a lot easier to see. We're more open, we're less apologetic about them, we're less trying to we don't have tidal waves really from them. Yeah.
I might disagree with that, but
Well,
maybe. It's hard to say. I don't even know
yeah,
if I think a social type is real, so that's
that's right,
assuming I
right.
take it as such, though. So
Yeah.
here's an interesting thought I had. I actually have I have like a kind of a trashy video that I'm developing on social types that I want to explain. I think I have some new information there. I'm actually stealing some ideas from what you put up on your social hierarchy video, and then I'm kind of mashing them
Cool.
together. So
Shrek is love?
no, none of that.
No.
None of that.
Like,
Um, so Shark is life too, though. Can't forget
oh,
that part.
that's
Yeah.
true.
Um, but I feel like what the social types are is they feel like a strategy that we like. It's like we're born with a plan A, B, C, D, and we default to plan A, which is called, presumably make friends or whatever. And that's how you're going to survive in an environment. And then you have plan B, which is, okay, well, if I can't make friends, then I'll specialize. And then plan C. But the question I have, assuming that's even correct and that lines up, because for me, I'm still thinking about it and I'm looking at it, and I feels like that's the correct way to categorize it. Categorize it is it's a role that you choose to pick. It's a
Yeah.
role that employs a strategy to survive in an environment of people, and then usually there's also like
Yeah,
a
you could
component
look
of
at it that way. I'm seeing it as well as something where do you derive meaning from in your life?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So that when they did a question on, what is the friends versus flex, like how would you relabel it? They actually reached out to the Facebook and actually talked to the community, which was a shocking surprise. Yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, so what I was answering was this is an I had for a while, but I think it connects here is like, are you looking for a passion or are you looking for a calling? They have those ideas. Oh, follow your passion, find your passion, find what you're passionate about. Sure, that's one thing, but then on the other hand, there's also a calling. There's like, okay, you might really love singing, but you really suck at it. And you might be, really, really good at painting, but you just don't like doing it. So painting might be your calling. Like the world might be asking you, come paint, but your passion is
yeah.
singing, right? And so I think maybe that's kind of a lens you can sort of take on it, whereas like fours are looking for their calling. Like how is this going to contribute? How are we going to connect to the world? Like what is needed from me? What does the ant colony need me to be? A worker ant, right? Whereas like a passion would be more like a one thing. It's like, who cares what people want me to do? I'm this, and I'm going to self-define. And yeah,
So I'd hate to reuse the same terms, but it almost sounds like you're saying there's like a like it's like a DIDE kind of variable to it.
sort of. I mean, Dave and Shan say the same thing about those two coins. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, okay.
yeah,
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how social types develop. I feel like for me the problem I have is because we can see them in a we can see them presumably, like it feels like we are all kind of agreeing on something, but I guess the question I'm asking is like what is the what
yeah,
is it that we're talking about? And I feel like if we can actually I feel like if we don't have the what, then you could have the social types like flip-flopping between ones that are close enough because it just seems like they're a number one, but oh wait,
yeah.
it's Eminem and he's specializing and he actually just is having friends with Dr. Dre over here, or being friendly with Dr. Dre. I think I misspoke there, but anyway, but you could easily say like Eminem's a number one when it seems like he's not. So I feel like if we don't have an actual central definition of how are we going to split these two apart,
Yeah.
you know, the 1 or 3. And then another question is, I feel as I've thought about it, I'm like, why are we sticking with these 4? I don't like I feel like there is a possibility that we could pull out more out of it. Maybe it's already been tried. I don't know, but
Yeah. Yeah, you can. I'm sure you can. But it's like, okay, like let's take okay, high ambition versus low ambition. So if there's a specialized with a high ambition, oh, there's a 3. If there's a specialized with a low ambition, okay, there's your 4.
yeah, yeah.
If there's a generalized with a high ambition, there's your 1. Generalized with a low ambition, there's your 4. Like you can map it like you can pick whatever criteria you want. It'll be worth it could be worthwhile.
Yeah.
And what makes it worthwhile is the data set. Like that's what when I looked at Enneagram, that's what I was coming to as well. Is okay, there's this Enneagram system. Maybe it's right, maybe it's not right. It doesn't really matter. There's these categories that you can put people into. But then once you have enough ones, enough twos, enough eights, enough nines, you can start seeing patterns and clustering there. And then it becomes useful to categorize people because the category says something about them.
Mm,
Like there's a commonality in the nines that says something about the person. And so the
yeah.
more different ways you can slice people into categories, the more the category informs on the individual.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I think you might have touched on that on one of your videos where you're talking about those like weird category blocks where like
Right,
there is
maybe.
anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Um crud, I had something else I wanted to my brain keeps on failing
Is
me.
there's more than 4.
Oh. Oh, yes. So what I'm thinking is like are could you then potentially and I feel like that's kind of what you just did is you can take a mixture. Like is there some kind of a mixture that you could do where you could merge them and find
Yeah.
some kind of hybrid stuff going on? How like defined can you get? Because right now it feels like it's a really strong pattern, but it's like so overview that it doesn't I feel like it doesn't
I mean,
say
that's the
too
thing
much.
with categories. You can change and mold the categories to whatever you want. And again, the category will inform on whatever's in there. It's like this is a
Mm,
set, and the fact that these are all part of the same set, we can like abstract something out of that.
yeah.
What is masculine? We've got males and we've got females. So what is masculine? Okay, let's abstract masculine. That's what I was doing in that video. And it's like, okay, well, I don't fit into this masculine stuff. I'm feminine. It's like, okay, well, maybe you abstract feminine and that's closer to you. That's fine.
Oh, yeah, that video was so good. I agree. I I don't even know if you had a conclusion, but I agree with everything you said so much of just how you were slicing that. Yeah.
Right.
Um, so one thing I wanted to back up to that's been sticking out in my mind, you mentioned the actual cognition of what's going on. So when you this was way back in our interview here or whatever, but you mentioned the actual cognition. So is that when you're talking about that, are you talking about the actual like the brain imaging scanning like the neurons like how what do you mean when you say the actual cognition being like measured or what is it?
Yeah. So cognition is how information is being processed. Um, and we're all processing information in different ways. And I think that's what type is at the end of the day
Mm,
is
yeah.
our nuance in the way we process differently.
Okay. I need to stop you there because that's exactly the as I was examining these social types, I went, okay, so what are the real types? And I went, they're just how you process the information of how to get to your social hierarchy goals, like
Right.
passions, whatever. So it does seem like it's just an informational thing. Anyway, if you had sorry to cut you off, but yeah.
No, yeah, you're good. Yeah. And so the categories we put people into typology is supposed to inform us about what kind of cognition is going on under the hood.
Mm,
So it's like you have all of these um, sports cars, so they should all have sports engines under the hood. Is basically what you're assuming.
yeah. Yeah. Have you put any work into I don't know how deep you are into this typology stuff as far as like the actual work you've put on the back end, but is there any way that I don't know how well connected you are either, but is there any way you know of to like get a hold of people that can do like brain imaging to like figure out what a quote unquote like a TI brain looks like and things? So I want to also preface this with saying I did see your interview with
Dario Nardi.
Nardi,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. So it seems like there are people who have already done this work, but I don't
So yeah,
know.
Dario Nardi's been doing this for a long time. He has instructions on how you can download his software, buy your own um, whatever head device, and the more magnetic sensors you have, the better resolution you'll have on the brain and all the parts of it. My problem with Dario Nardi is just that why is he trying to force it into a Jungian typology? If you see people with certain brain patterns,
Make a
put
new category.
yeah, make a category for that brain pattern, figure out what those people have in common, make a new name for it, and
Yeah.
then maybe it's NI, maybe it's not, right? Because
Yeah,
like
maybe
he's
it'll
gotten
transform. Yeah.
right, right. And yeah, you can get a way more nuanced typology out of that. You can categorize the brain and the way people's cognition works that way. And yeah, I guess it's also just like measuring the blood flow to those areas. You're not actually measuring the electrical signals or any of that. You're measuring more blood flow with
Oh,
those caps, I
interesting.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was the exact same thing that I feel was kind of cooking under the surface for me when I was listening to your when you talked to him. Is I was thinking like, okay, well, if you're looking at somebody you think is an SE person and you're seeing there's a difference there, why are you saying it's an SE person? Make a new, like, start naming it new things, start picking this apart and
Right.
creating new categories. Yeah, I felt the
Create new
exact same way when I
categories.
saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then once you get like 10 people with A4 activated, be like, okay, what's the commonality between all of these A4 activation people? Like, what do they have in common? And then start the definition of what the A4 activation even means, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's like screw these weird labels that we've had all the way back from young that never even
Right.
worked to begin with. Like, why are we holding on to them? They're nothing sacred, as far as I'm concerned.
Nothing sacred. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's kind of frustrating to me that nobody has sat down to do that work, but maybe I don't want to be too frustrated because that means I have to go do it.
Exactly. That's the void you're seeing. You got to go do it. Hmm.
Because I don't know if I have time for that, but maybe someday I
Yeah.
will.
You got to be okay with some voids. You can't complain about them too much. Otherwise, where have you been? Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
Dario Nardi is the same thing. Like, no one's doing this. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not doing it right? Well, you're doing
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And now it's easier to access those caps, and he's got software, so you can tweak his software. It's a easier learning curve to get into.
Yeah. Yeah. He's put the
Right.
groundwork there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's just like it's not really the categories you pick, it's the data you have. It's the data that makes it important. Like Enneagram is so powerful because so many people use it. It doesn't matter if the categories are all backwards and wrong. There are still real categories and they have value because of the data.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Wow. Um, So how I think this is going to be my last question, and then we can
Sure.
kind of trail off from here. And if you have anything you want to talk about specifically too, you can bring anything up. But um, how how do you view truth? Like, what is truth?
Oh yeah. Let's just end with an easy question then. Good one. Um yeah, it's a tough one. Truth is not there's no way you can know what truth is. There's no way you can know that there is even a truth. Um, I view it as hitting the nail on the head. Um, so like OPS is got close, it hit the nail somewhere, and so we're all sort of flocking around it because it hit something.
Mm,
Um, yeah, if you shoot a bullet in the dark, you don't have. It's like it's really rare that you're going to be able to hit the target. Like, oh, we made a computer by accident. Nope, you took physics. It took a lot of investigation to know how things work, and you combine them together just right, and you built the structure just right for it to actually calculate things and have internet. It's very hard to hit that nail on the head. So the fact that the fact that you hit the nail close to the fact that there's evidence that something's right here, like there isn't computers aren't false, they work. There's truth to building a computer, like there's truth behind the ideas that went into building. There's truth behind the physics. There's truth behind the the solid state materials, the PN junctions, like all of that stuff. There's truth behind the way computation works and the way gates work. Yeah. And
So
so
is it like,
yeah, it's just what you can abstract out of that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of blew my mind whenever I figured out that, or had like heard somebody mention, I don't remember when, but I would have presumably been a younger teenager, and then I thought about the fact that like it seemed so obvious that I have my coffee cup right here, or my wife's coffee cup, and I would say like, of course it's true that the coffee cup is there, but then when you realize that the truth can like the truth of the coffee cup can infinitely unravel. Like there's so many truths to the coffee cup that just keep expanding out and
Yeah.
out, because you can look at it from 100 different angles in zoom ins, and like, and that's just sight alone, let alone when you look at, you could say
Hmm.
like, well, there's the truth of where all the atoms are, and it's like, well, when
Yeah.
you look at the cup, we don't see all the atoms, so we're not even seeing all the truth of
You're
the
looking
cup.
at the purpose. You're looking at what's the purpose of the cup. That's why it's a cup.
Hmm. Yep. And with that, like, do you see value being behind truth? So we have truth unto value, or do you think it works reverse? Or
And
like a
I was
different way?
I was
I don't
trying to
know.
wrap my head around what value is, intrinsic value is, all that kind of stuff. And I'd I can logically get to the point where, okay, I can see where intrinsic value is a thing, but it doesn't feel like it is. It feels like it's all just subjective. Because if all humans would disappear and vanish, what would be there to value things? What would give it value, imbue it with value? If everyone wanted the red truck and no one wanted the black truck, so the red truck is more valuable? Not because it's intrinsically more valuable, only because it's more desired, it's more yeah, it's more sought after, supply and demand.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could technically get into like a definition, oh, supply and demand, and do a formula, and then here we've got a value, and then we can price this based on this value, right? How do you price things? How do you price a can of Coca-Cola? Um, like the actual value of the ingredients is like 2 cents. So then why are people paying $1 for it?
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you determine what to do, like, with your life? What's your determining factor there? Or like, are you trying to figure that out? Maybe that's part of where you're at life.
No. Um, yeah. I mean, I would break it down to l- it's easier to be dead. It's easier not to live.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Choosing to live means you're choosing something that's not easy, and and if you're choosing it to get something out of it yourself, then you're not going to get anything out of it. Like that's just the wrong way to even look at it.
Yeah.
So navigating through life can't be what am I going to get out of life. So for me, like the word that stepped up to my mind as soon as you asked that question is responsibility. It's like, what am I responsible for? What am I here to do? What is my purpose and my meaning? And
Yeah.
even if it's hard or whatever, like what am I
Oh,
here to what 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 puzzle what puzzle piece am I? How do I fit into this
yeah,
place
and
of
you bring up such a good point, and I think selfishness, like self-preservation, selfishness, everything about like about serving the self is, if you have a like a greedy asshole who only cares about himself, that is the function of self-preservation unto responsibility being hijacked, because you only preserve your, I feel like the way it seems to me to lay out is you preserve yourself because otherwise you have no utility towards the responsibility. But so like if you don't eat food, it doesn't matter like how responsible you are, you can be responsible for everybody under the planet, but if you don't eat your own food, you can't be responsible anymore, you know? So there has to be some
yeah.
degree of selfishness in there. but it seems like the selfishness gets hijacked. Like as people, we have a tendency towards just doing. I don't know if self-preservation is a good word for it. Maybe you can think of something better if you're catching my drift here. But it's like the tendency to serve or like figure out what like the words you said. What do I get out of it? And it's
Right.
like what you get out of it is just enough so you can keep giving more to other people. So you can be responsible to other people and to
Yeah.
others, kind of a thing. It's something weird like that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you're gone. You're not gonna stick around, and after a few generations, no one will even remember anything but, like, your contributions will peter off.
Yep.
It's like a tornado 1,000 miles away has no influence.
Yep.
Um, so what it's like the cell in the body. Does the cell in the body care about, life and what's its meaning and its purposes? It has a purpose, it has a meaning. The cell doesn't know what the purpose and meaning is, but all of the cells together give a little bit, and in the end, it becomes an organism or an organ, becomes an organism. And then the organism can have a higher meaning and a higher purpose. And so we're all just cells in a body. And we, if we all contribute a little bit together, it adds up to a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think really what society struggles with and culture struggles with is how do we not cancel out our efforts? How are we not pulling the block in different directions? We need to all pull the block in the same direction, and it needs to be the right direction. And then yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think part of that, I think, is when we pull the block in different directions, whichever side wins, we see if it's the right way to go, we'll see it. And if it's the wrong way to pull the block, then we'll also see it. So it's like, even in that conflict, I think we make progress at the end of it, at the end of the
Yeah,
process.
yeah, I can
The
see
ideal,
that.
the ideal to me is like, let's speed that process up as quick as possible. Let's
Right.
let's
But
get
most of it
through
is
the
just
conflict.
random pulls in all different directions, and the block doesn't
Yeah,
move.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
The block doesn't move. And then whenever there's actually a significant force pulling the block in a certain direction, that's when every little person that's pulling contributes to the
yeah,
overall flow of it. So it's hard to see our own meaning and our own purpose because it's so insignificant on its own, but it becomes significant when it adds up together. It's like your vote doesn't matter, but overall, everyone's votes together does matter.
yeah. You're still responsible to vote to pull it back to the language you used before. You're still responsible. Like you have your part to play.
Right, you have your part to play, even if it doesn't feel like it matters or contributes.
Yeah. So zooming this all down, I get so that's kind of like I see that as a macro look at like what is your meaning and value, but like how do you on a day-to-day basis determine what you should do? Do you just like take it do you take it as like, okay, I don't know the ultimate meaning of what I'm doing at the end of it all, but I see that there's something, it's like you're looking for almost like using the voids maybe that we were talking about earlier as sort of
Yeah.
a mapping, or like you're using very different variables. What do you think you use to map how you act out on a given day? Like,
I mean, okay, so for me personally, it feels like I have a lot to contribute, but it's a battle to be able to do it, and it feels like it feels like any effort I put in is going to waste all the time, and, like, I'll put out a post and then no one will get it, or I'll look for a job for 10 years and then I will just never get a new job. And it's like, why am I wasting this effort? Why am I pushing the ball further down the road, like kicking the can further down the road and hoping that maybe further down the road something will come out of it. Um so yeah, when you ask like what do you know what to do, it's just keep trying. Keep trying,
yeah,
and then even if nothing comes out of it, at least there was the trying aspect of it that came out of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Cuz I think it's worse at the end of the day to get somewhere without having tried something different. Like there's the regret of not having tried to accomplish what you wanted to
yeah.
accomplish. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that a lot. That's something I think about. It used to I used to think about it daily, not so much anymore because I feel like it's kind of just ingrained in me, but I think about like at the end of my life, what would be the things that I would look back on and regret not having tried, regardless of the outcome. Yeah.
Right, regardless of the outcome. Yeah. So, yeah, it sucks failing, but it sucks more not having tried.
Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah.
does. Yeah. 'Cause I feel that for my life, I feel like I've spent all the way up until I was, like, 19 or 20, I feel like I had all these ideas of things I could do, and I never put any reality behind them. I just thought about them. I thought they'd be cool, theorized, speculated, talked about them,
Yeah,
but it was just there was never any output, and I feel like that's where I'm at now is I'm like,
right,
whatever that was that I was doing before, I know that has no meaning or value at the end of the day.
right. So, like, those caps, typology with the head caps, for example. So, you wanted to do that, and you're gonna try to doing it, and let's say in, like, 20 years, nothing comes out of it, you failed, no one's interested, and you're just like, "Oh, that was a wasted 20 years on this project," you know? So, yeah, that's what life feels like.
Yeah.
It's just that.
Yeah, and I feel like the thing that ties it together regardless of to me, regardless of what outcomes happen, is it is the people you connect with along the way. Like that
Sure.
intimate aspect of like, okay, we might both be just doing whatever we're doing in our life trying to succeed, but the fact that we got to at least talk and connect and relate, there's something to that. And I don't really get what it is, but there's something
Yeah.
there that's like valuable.
I mean, the big picture view is okay, so connection is important, especially to work together, especially to be an organism together. Um, s but, I don't know if that's the purpose of it. Like, is the purpose these connections, these relationships? Or are these relationships here to facilitate something else, something greater?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right,
I think I would say that they are. And I don't know what it is, but they seem like they're there to facilitate something more, and I that's complicated to weed out what the
right.
more is. 'Cause I
Yeah,
feel like at the end of all these kinda weird rabbit trails, I feel like to me, um, I feel like there is like, oh, I had a word. I was, like, thinking about this, like, a couple weeks ago, and I had, like, a good phrasing for it, but I feel like there is something about, I don't know, like Moses when he's up on the mountain and like he gets to see the back of God, it feels like sometimes I don't know, I feel like in my own life there's like glimpses of that and I'm using it in a metaphorical manner, not like I literally get to see God or anything, but there's like something about like that deeper thing. And it's like the more you define
yeah.
what it is, the more it becomes something that like
Yeah, to bring it
you don't
back to
want
the narratives, it's like you don't know what the purpose of the movie is until it's over.
yeah, yeah. Something like that, yeah.
Like, the story doesn't make sense when you're in it, it only makes sense when it's over.